we have taken 3 API gateways. How those services can be queried with the help of API gateway. Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to Think Constructive. I am Isha. In this session, I will be talking all about API gateway for microservices. So I will be starting with the API gateway, what and why. That will be followed by the live demonstration of API gateway with the help of the Spring Cloud Spring Gateway for Java microservices, rather Java Spring Boot microservices, and then finally we will be testing all those stuffs. Alright, so I will quickly give you recap of the previous sessions and then we will be starting with the API gateway discussion and implementation. So watch the session till the end so that you don't miss upon on any of the core concepts. Let's have a quick recap of what all we have built in our previous sessions, and that will be followed by our API gateway discussion and implementation. Alright, so here is the microservices example app. So this is a fictitious social media application in which there are many microservices such as user profile, post notification, UI service and many more. Out of all these services, what we are building is user service, post service and notification service. Alright, here is the service detailing what we are building as a part of this session series. So we are building user service, post service and notification service. User service is talking to post service and notification service, getting the response, collating all the response in user service itself and returning the response back to the user. However, it is not limited to that only via user post and notification services can be called. They can be called independently also because all these services to adhere with microservices principle are REST services. Alright, next what we have discussed is service registration and discovery with Netflix Eureka. So what we have done here, we have registered all three services, user, post and notification services as Eureka client, and there is a discovery server which we have built with the help of Eureka server, and all these libraries belongs to Spring Cloud. So all these three services are registered with the Eureka server. Eventually we call it a discovery server. Alright, so next what we will be doing, we will be talking about API gateway. So let us now discuss what is API gateway and why is it so important. So what is API gateway? What happens is whenever we build so many microservices and we expose them to the external world. So external application can be any third-party application, any mobile application, any web application, anything, right? They want to talk to our services. The key requirement for those services to be able to talk to our microservices, they should be able to call the microservices with the help of REST APIs and should be able to consume the REST responses. Alright, that's how it works. So what happens? Currently in our session, we are building 3 services. But going forward, when my application would scale, there can be multiple instances of each of these services and eventually there can be many more services not limited to these 3 services. So what happens whenever any third-party application wants to talk to any of these services, they need to have the exact URL. So it will be too cumbersome for any third-party application or any client application to call my web service because each service will have their own REST URL. So what is the solution for that? To ease out the things for the client application, what is the way out? To expose single URL or limited number of URLs that client application should know and send the request using that URL, and then the rest is the job of something else here to route the request to the right services. Alright, so how do we do that? That is where the API gateway comes into picture. It becomes so important because what happens here is all these 3 services, what you are seeing here, post, user or notification services, these services URL will be kept in API gateway and API gateway's URL will be exposed to the external world. So any client-side application will actually use API gateway's URL and send the request to API gateway. API gateway will internally do the routing mechanism basis on the request to the respective service. So that is hidden, encapsulated inside API gateway. Alright, so client application is less loaded. They just need to know only one URL here in this case and send the request, and these services will be routed with the help of API gateway. All right. So this is about API gateway, what and why. Now going forward, what happens? My services will grow. And here at the client side application, you can visualize there can be web application, mobile application, or there can be any third party application. So if every application will be talking to only one API gateway, the API gateway will become extremely overloaded. So it will start either rejecting the request or failing the request. So what is the solution for that? So let's say in our example, we have taken three API gateways: web API gateway, mobile API gateway, and public API gateway. So web application will be talking to web API gateway, mobile applications will be talking to mobile API gateway, and third party applications will be talking to public API gateway. Eventually, all these three API gateways are capable enough to talk any of the microservices behind the scenes. Alright, so that's how you are distributing the load of the API gateways. So what happens? Client applications are happy because they are sending the request to the respective gateways, getting the faster responses. And this API gateway is also happy because its load is distributed. So this is one of the solutions to handle overloaded API gateways. Alright, so let us now quickly move towards the implementation of API gateway. So for implementation of API gateway, I'm using Java Spring Boot microservices. All the details which we have already covered in the previous sessions are getting displayed on your screens right now. Also, these session links are tagged in the above tag section as well as in the description box below. There is a playlist for microservices tutorial is also available on the channel, wherein you can find all these sessions. So I will highly recommend you go ahead and watch these sessions. So for now, let us proceed with the API gateway implementation. So we will be using our developed Java Spring Boot microservices, and for implementing API gateway, we will be using Spring Cloud library, that is Cloud Gateway. Alright, so let us now quickly start with the implementation. Let us first create the API gateway project with the help of Spring Initializer. Okay. So I'll go to website start.spring.io. Okay. So here I will choose a project as Maven, language as Java. Let Spring Boot be 3.0.1, group as com.thinkconstructive. All right. In artifact, I will say API-gateway. So description I prefer to change, so I will just give API gateway for microservices. Okay. So package name will be built like this: packaging jar, Java version 17. Now I will add dependencies. So first dependency is the gateway, Spring Cloud Routing Gateway. And another dependency I would need is Eureka Client. Okay. Eureka Discovery Client dependency is needed because API Gateway registers itself with Eureka Server as a Eureka Client. Alright, so I'll go ahead and say generate. My API Gateway zip is downloaded. Now the next thing, I need to unzip it and load it in the Java editor. I'll be using IntelliJ IDEA editor. You can use any other Java editor of your choice, whatever you prefer. Okay, so my API Gateway project is loaded here. So I'll quickly show you the pom.xml first. So in pom.xml, you can notice Java version 17 is taken. And most important, the dependency stuffs. So first dependency, you can see Spring Cloud Starter Gateway dependency. This dependency includes Spring Actuator dependency in itself because that is also needed to monitor services health. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you that part as well. So I'm inside Spring Cloud Gateway. Okay, and here in a Spring Cloud Starter Gateway, I will go inside a Spring Cloud Gateway server. And here I'll try to find out Spring Actuator. You can see Spring Boot Starter Actuator is already included. Otherwise, we were supposed to include this dependency explicitly, but it is already there. So I'm not writing it or including it in pom.xml explicitly. Okay. So here in pom.xml, I have got the Spring Cloud Starter Gateway along with a Spring Actuator. And another important dependency we have got is Spring Cloud Starter Netflix Eureka Client because API gateway will register itself with Eureka server as Eureka client, that is where this dependency is also needed. Okay. Now go back to src main and let us see our Spring main application file. So this is the Spring Boot starter application file. Here only we will annotate this file as enable discovery client. The moment we do this, this application, whenever it will come up, it will try to register itself with Eureka server. All right. So the moment we have included the dependencies, API gateway things are up and running, and for enabling it as a Eureka client, we need to enable this annotation along with the dependencies. All right. So these two things we have done. What is the next step? What is the purpose of API gateway? To route the incoming request to the respective service. That means somewhere we should be writing its routing, that upon what basis it should map the request to the targeted URL. Alright, so for that we will go to resources. So we will write all the routing related information, port related information for this in application.properties. Just in case you are using application.yml file, you are free to use that file also. So any one file you should be using, either application.properties or application.yml file. Alright, so for this demonstration, I'll proceed with application.properties. In case you would need application.yml file also, let me know in the comment section and I will provide you that file as well. Okay. So first thing we will be writing here is the port information for API gateway. So we will say server dot port is equal to, let's say 9000, because I know this port on my machine is free. If 9000 in your case is being used by any other application, so you can choose to use any other port, whichever port is free for your local machine or remote machine, whatever you are using. All right. Next information we should be writing is Eureka client service URL, because we are registering, or any API gateway should be registered with Eureka server also. So here I should be providing that information as well. So I'll quickly paste that information and will explain that to you. Okay. So here is the eureka.client.service URL. So where this will be served, default zone, it will be http localhost /eureka. So this is the URL for my Eureka server. Okay. I'll quickly show you the Eureka server port as well, so that you are very clear with the stuffs. So this is my Eureka server application, which we discussed and developed in our last session. Go ahead, watch that so that you don't miss upon on any of the core concept. So in this Eureka server application, you can see server.port is 8999. That means my Eureka server is running on 8999. So what I will do, I'll quickly bring up this Eureka server application and will show you the localhost URL where this Eureka server is listening. Okay. So since I'm using all these applications on my local machine, that is where I'm using localhost. If you have Eureka server availability on the remote machines, you can use that URL particularly. All right. So you can notice here in the log, started Eureka server application and updating port to 8999. All right. So this is the Eureka server localhost :8999 we have given. So let us quickly check it, whether it is now up and running or not. So I'll just say localhost :8999. See, my Eureka server is up and running, although no Eureka client is up till now. So it says no instances available. Okay. Alright, so let us come back to our IntelliJ editor and continue with the routing information in this application.properties for API gateway. So what is the next thing? I should be giving some application name to this API gateway application. If I will not do that, it will start showing some random application name in my Eureka server dashboard. And what happens? Sometimes it becomes confusing when the list of services are high. All right. So it is always a good practice to give application name explicitly. Dot application dot name is equal to API gateway. Okay, you can write any other name, but this is the name which is, easy to identify and to understand. So I'll be using this name. The next thing what I should be giving is I'll start giving routing information. So in our example, we have three services: user service, post service, and notification services. So I'll start giving routing information for each of the service. Okay. How do I do that? I will say spring.cloud.gateway. Okay. Dot routes. In a square bracket, I will say 0 because this is the first service routing information I am giving. There can be many more services. Okay. So this routes is an array actually. It can hold multiple elements. So first service, route 0. Dot, first of all, I should give service ID as it is whatever my service ID. So if you remember, we have user service. So here is my user service. I will just open its application.properties and you can see this service name is user-service. I will copy and paste this name as it is here. Okay. So that's how it will match and map the service. Then next property for this routes I should be writing is, let me just copy this much. All right. Paste, and then the next property is URI. So next property is URI. So I provide the value for this URI. So it will be lb://. That's how you should be writing, and then you will say user service. Okay. And then the next property is again inside this route 0, the predicates. Okay, predicates. So it is again more than one. It can be more than one rather. Okay. So as a first element for this predicates, I will give path, okay, is equal to /user/**. Okay. So let me now explain this. Inside this first services routes information, service ID we should give, then URI, so lb://user service, LB is for load balancing, and then the predicates 0. So first path information we are giving it as path is equal to /user/**. All right. That's how I should be giving routing information for my remaining two services. So what I will do, I will just copy and paste this and do the required changes. So first of all, route 0 we have already populated. So I will populate now the next information for route 1. That means for second service. Instead of this user service, my second service I will be writing is post service. Okay. So I'll show you that name as well. So in the post service, you can see service name is given as post-service. So I'll just copy, paste this name here. All right. Similarly here. Okay. And then what is the path at which this post service listens? I'll just open post controller and will show you. Okay. So the post service is mapped to /post. That means request should come at /post in order to be routed to the post service. Okay. So in this path, I should be writing post. Okay. /*. After this, anything can come. But whatever requests are coming with /post will be routed to the post service. Similarly for user, whatever requests are coming to /user will be routed to user service. Okay. I hope this much is clear. Similarly, we will write the routing information for the notification service. Again, the third routing information. So I will give routes as 2 indexing. All right. And here in the ID, again, let us go back and check our notification service. So here in the notification service, you can see Spring application name is notification-service. So I'll just copy and paste the details here. Okay. One more thing in the notification controller, how the request mapping is happening. /notification. That means whatever requests are coming to /notification must be routed to notification service. Okay. How do we do that? in the path, I will write notification. So slash notification slash star star. And here in URI also, I should be giving my notification service name. Okay. Yeah. So all three services, routing information, API gateway application name, and server port and respective Eureka server information we have given here. Okay. And if you remember, we have already bring up our Eureka server. Okay. So after doing this much, my API gateway routing stuffs are completed. So this much we are supposed to do. So now I will show you individually how user service, post service and notification service can be queried. Okay. And then we'll see how those services can be queried with the help of API gateway. Okay. So let us now bring up our user service, the first thing. Okay. And we should know at which port it is working. So my user service is working on port 8082. Okay. User service is up and running. I'll now bring up post service. And let us see which port it is using. 8081. Okay. And notification service. And what port is it using? It is running on the default port. So default port is always 8080 for Tomcat. Tomcat is internally embedded with Spring Boot. Correct? So now let us first query notification service. Okay. And see how it behaves. So what is the request mapping for notification service? This one. Just in case if you want to learn Spring Boot REST API creation, how to build entire CRUD application along with the databases and many more things, there is already an existing session on this channel. Playlist link I have already tagged in the card section above as well as in the description box below. So feel free to watch those Spring Boot sessions. Those will be really helpful for you. Okay, so it is, let's make a get call. So with the help of this slash notification followed by some notification ID. Okay, so since we have bring up all three services, user, post and notification, those services instances should be registered here. So we can see all three. Okay, and now let us query first of all notification service. So it should be running on port 8080 slash notification slash, let's say I'm giving ID as 1. Okay, enter. What am I seeing here? Notification ID and description. So individually I'm calling it. Okay. Similarly, I would want to call post service. So my post service is also up and running on port 8081. Okay. So let us now go back to the window and localhost colon port 8081 slash post service, let's say followed by some post ID 1 I am giving. Okay, it is able to respond me. Okay, now let us see our user service. It is up and running where? On port 8082. Okay, so let us now query this service. Let's see what happens. Localhost port 8082 slash user slash, let's say ID as 1. It is giving me the response along with the post and notification details. All right. And also with the username, user ID, user phone number, all the required details. Okay. So individually, all these services are responding with the help of REST request and response. Okay. And we can also see these services are up and running in my Eureka server. Okay. Let me just do it this way. Yeah. Now, as we discussed, API gateway will be the single entry point for all the third-party application, and that is what we should be exposing. So we have built our API gateway code. Now let us bring up our API gateway application and query that application and see whether it is able to respond for post notification and user service single-handedly or not. All right. So let us go back to our API gateway application code. So this is my API gateway application code. Okay, let us bring up the application. So my API gateway application is up and running on port 9000. Okay. And what is my service name? Service name is API gateway. Okay. Let us see whether we are able to find this in Eureka server first of all or not. Okay. So now my Eureka server is showing 4 services: API gateway, notification service, post service, and user service. Okay. All 3 services, user, notification, and post, we queried individually. Now let us try to query all these 3 services with the help of only one application, that is API gateway. Okay. Localhost :9000. Okay. And then let us first of all query notification service. Let's say I want to query it for ID 2. Cool. We are able to get the response even on 9000 port, which is a port for API gateway. That means my request for notification service is correctly getting routed to notification service. That is where I am able to get this kind of response. Okay. Now let us do a query for post service. So instead of notification, I will write my post for ID 2, let's say. Cool. I'm able to get the post response back with the help of 9000. That means my API gateway. Okay. Similarly, let us query our user service on port 9000, which is for API gateway, and let us do it for let's say ID 2 itself. So what am I seeing? I'm able to get the complete user response with the respective user ID, username, corresponding post, and corresponding notification stuff. Yeah. So no need to call these services individually. Rather, just one single entry point is now sufficient for all these 3 services, or all these 3 services in multiple instances, as well as many more services. Whichever services routing we will configure here, we will be able to route the request to those services. Okay. So that's how the API gateway should be done with the help of Spring Cloud Gateway. Okay. So I hope this complete demonstration of API gateway is very clear to all of you. Let's have a quick recap of what all we have covered in this session. So we started with a quick recap of microservices, all previously done sessions. That was followed by what and why of API gateway. Then we have implemented API gateway and tested it thoroughly. Next, I will be talking about resiliency of microservices along with its implementation. Thank you everyone for watching the session. I hope you found it useful and you actually were able to implement API Gateway for your microservices. If you have any doubts, ask your doubts in the comment section. And also I would like to tell you that there are more and more Spring Boot, Java, microservices and Spring Security sessions are available on this channel. So feel free to explore those sessions as well. And also share the channel and session details with your friends, family and colleagues so that we grow together more stronger as a community. See you in the next session. Bye for now.